of those were actually popular dances, but the twist was definitely the most popular. Approximately how many years can the average oak tree live?
100?
It's actually 1,000 years.
Oh,
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to hand it over to Marvin now, and he's going to give you a little explanation before we begin of how to properly work Zoom. So thank you for doing the trivia. I appreciate it.
good
It
questions.
was fun.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Marvin, and I'm just going to go over some Zoom features really quickly to get everyone situated. If you want to mute or unmute your mic, you can locate the mute button in the bottom left corner. It is the microphone icon, and it is labeled mute or unmute. If it has a slash through it, it means you are muted, and you need to click it once more to unmute yourself. If you want to stop or start your video, there's a camera feature in the bottom left called stop or start video, and you do the same thing with that. If you want to ask any questions in the chat feature, locate the chat feature at the bottom. It is a text bubble labeled chat, and it will pull up in the chat room in the right, where you can send a message to everyone or directly to one of us to ask any questions. And now I will pass it back to Ethan to introduce our speaker. Thank you for coming.
Okay, so before we begin, I just wanted to give a little introduction to who Brandy is. She's a park ranger at Elk Knob currently, and she'll be talking about local plants, which is what I'm assuming all of you are here for. She has been a park ranger at Moore Mountain, Pettigrew State Park, and Elk Knob currently. She went to school at the University of Georgia and got her bachelor's in horticulture, and spent some time in graduate school in Northern California studying forestry. So I'm going to hand it over to Brandy now. If you have any questions, please save them till the end of her speaking. And thank you for being here.
Okay. Welcome to the Zoom chat. It's not quite spring here yet. Usually I do several programs. Usually I do one on winter edibles and ephemerals. So I'll do a little PowerPoint presentation on those. Yeah, if you have any questions, just put them in the chat. Or I mean, if you want to unmute yourself and speak, that's fine too. I don't mind being interrupted. But yeah, so I'm going to talk about what I would usually talk about. There's nothing up here. I'm at 4,600 feet in my office right here. And we have a backcountry trail that goes down into a valley, and it's about 4,000 feet. And things actually bloom there a month before they bloom up here. So in April, mid-April, you can go down the backcountry trail and you can see all kinds of wildflowers, but you won't see any up here because they don't come out up here until May. And of course, the leaves on the trees don't usually start coming out until May, which when I first moved here, March came and I was like, where are the leaves? And then April came and I'm like, where are the leaves? So I thought I was really surprised that they came out so late, but we are at a high elevation. I'm going to attempt to share my screen with you guys. I practiced it earlier so that you can see. Not you. You all see Elk Knob?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. That is a photograph that I took from the top of Snake Mountain across the street from the park. Snake Mountain's slightly taller than Elk Knob, but only by like 30 feet. Anyway, let's see. Okay, the first thing I wanted to talk about was our winter edibles. Do you see that screen?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
All right. When I talk about winter edibles, and I talk about native plants, but most winter edibles are not native plants. The non-natives tend to come out earlier than the native ones do. And there are people that lived here used to collect plants, especially, I mean, when you had to go all the way to Boone to get groceries and there wasn't a lot available in the wintertime. People would go out and collect plants in the wild. Let's see. The first one, hairy bittercress in the mustard family. People would collect a lot of greens. It's got a little spice to it, so people would chop them up and throw them in soups and stews to try to extend their food supply until their crops could grow. And mustard family plants are always, you know, for the most part, good to eat. They have those leaves that are compound. They got lots of little leaflets on them. And they usually have that 4 petals, white or yellow usually. But, you know, tasty, not too bad. Dandelion, I love dandelion. You can eat every part of it. And they're sunny little sunshine flowers. But I put the leaves in salads. I sprinkle the flowers in soups or on top of salads. I roast, or I dig up the roots and dry them for tea. You can also like roast them and cut them up and eat them like a vegetable. It's the roasted roots are also have been used as a coffee substitute. It's got a strong flavor and it makes your tea really dark. But like my sister lives in California and she's not a nature type of person, and she's like, oh, dandelions are horrible, I've got to kill all of them in my yard. But I like the more the merrier because they're a wonderful vegetable. And people would eat greens that grew up in the spring to combat scurvy and in the wintertime, and to give them the vitamins and minerals they needed when they started get really working on their farm crops and being more energetic in the spring and summer than most people in the wintertime. They, of course, you know, did less and rested more and didn't travel. Unfortunately, we don't do that anymore. I wish that we did. Okay, chickweed. Oh my gosh, this is one of my favorites because it tastes like butter lettuce. It's very mild, it's very soft. It's full of minerals and vitamins, and it grows in a big mat. And it's really tasty. And people used to eat chickweed as one of the first foods after an illness because it's so gentle in your stomach. It doesn't cause people stomach problems like when they're recovering from an illness. So I harvest a lot of chickweed and I blend it up and put it in my pesto. Wild onions. These are, I mean, they taste like onions and they grow everywhere. And these are green pretty much all winter long. I can go out in February and find green onions just about anywhere. And they grow in clumps. So you dig up the whole clump and they're all stuck together. But I actually had a neighbor put a bag full of wild onion bulbs in my mailbox. So I planted them in my garden. But yeah.
Brandy, will you, in the chat, someone, Bonnie had asked, will you tell us which parts of the plants are edible?
Yeah, well, it's so far, I don't know about the roots on this one, but all the above ground parts can be eaten. Everything on this plant can be eaten. I would avoid I would avoid the base of the flower because it's got all that milky sap in it. But the yellow flower parts, the leaves and the roots are all edible. Chickweed, all the tops, everything above ground is edible. Wild onion, the entire plant is edible. Yeah, I don't just use the bulbs. I use the whole plant. Oh, and next is garlic mustard, which for some odd reason doesn't like to grow up here. I have seen it in ditches and stuff, but a lot of people don't like it because it spreads, especially farmers and stuff, but it doesn't really do that here. I had there was a patch about a quarter mile past my house, and it's gone now. I guess it just died off. But garlic mustard is in the mustard family, of course, and the leaves when it's young on the right there look different than they do when they get older. And the younger you eat it, it tastes best when it's cold outside. So an early harvest is good. The top, the leaves, it's usually you take the leaves before it blooms. And it has sort of a garlicky type of flavor, not super garlicky like ramps or anything, but people will harvest that and use it to flavor soups and casseroles and stuff.
As I comment that garlic mustard is a horrible invasive in Illinois, where it looks like leaf is from.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Everything I've showed you so far is not native, except for the wild onion. But for some odd reason up here on Elk Knob, invasives have a hard time, except for multiflora rose, which loves it. So a lot of the things, a lot of these plants are invasive in other areas here. Garlic mustard really isn't. It's tried and it usually dies off. But yeah, you have to be careful. Well, which is why, I mean, it's good to harvest these things and eat them. That's a great way to keep them from spreading instead of spraying them with poison. Mullein, I love mullein. People used to pick the hairy leaves. They're very soft and smushy. People used to pick them and put them in their shoes to keep their feet warm in the wintertime. And the flowers aren't out till later in the summer, and you can use those in a tea. The roots are used medicinally for back problems and stuff like that. I collect the leaves sometimes and dry them for tea, but I put them in a nut milk bag to keep the hairs out of the water, because the hairs on the leaves can be very irritating to the throat. But the whole plant is usable for different things, for tea or usually tea. Except unless you want to use the leaves in your shoes to keep it as an added layer of protection.
Have you done that?
Yeah, I did. When I first heard about it, I tried it because I was curious.
Did it work?
I don't really remember.
Must not have.
I was a little nervous because I didn't want the hairs to irritate my feet. Because they're a little, I guess if you had shoes made way back in the day and they didn't have adequate cushion or support, that they would keep your feet warm if they were just, thin pieces of leather. But I guess it was used as a survival type thing. Okay.
There was one other question about, are dandelions native?
Some are, not the true dandelion. I don't think it is. You have to be careful because there are so many plants that look like dandelions. And the sure way to tell that you're the non-native dandelion that I use in my tea and salad and whatever has a hollow stem. And other dandelion looking flowers have a solid stem.
And people can ask questions, as you mentioned, unmute and ask, or I'm watching the chat. If anyone wants to keep putting questions there, I'm happy to keep filtering them up to Brandy.
Yeah. Oops. White pine. Pine trees in general. Some pine trees, especially ones out west, are not edible. They make you sick. But white pine is white pine is full of vitamin C. You can take the needles and make a tea for an extra dose of vitamin C. I've done that, and it doesn't taste bad.
Brandy, how can you identify a white pine?
It's one of the only pines that grows up here. And white pines, it has to do with the needles. I think there are 5 needles in a bundle on a white pine tree versus 3 or 2 on others. The number of needles in a bundle and the length of the needles are indicators of what type of species you're looking at. Up here on Elk Knob, we don't have, pine trees aren't native to this area. We do have white pines, but that's the only pine that I've seen in this area, and they were planted. Basswood, known in Europe as linden. I've got one in my front yard, and the leaves, the flowers, and the buds are all edible. The red buds actually taste like nuts, like very mild flavored. It's got a very mild nutty flavor. And they're big and fat in the early spring, getting ready to open. And the leaves, when they're young, are mild and edible. And the flowers are very fragrant. They attract a lot of insects. And those can be used, collected, dried, and used in a tea as well. Basswood, the wood of the tree is very soft and very light colored. It's very easy to carve. A lot of people carve basswood. But yeah, the leaves are big and heart-shaped. This is American basswood. In Europe, they're European basswood. I think it's a smaller tree. But they're very, it's very popular in Europe to collect the leaves and the flowers. Let's see. Mountain mint. Now I've tried several different mints. The first time I came across mountain mint, I was looking at some groundsel that had bloomed, and I bent down to look at it, and I smelled very strong odor of mint. And it turns out I was sitting on it. But it has that kind of white, frosty looking leaves on the top. And it's not, I planted some in my garden. I just took it straight out of the backyard and transplanted it. But it is a mint, and it has a minty, it's very strong mint that you can like dry the leaves for tea or whatever. But I also found a patch of spearmint across down the hill from where I live. And I think I like the spearmint better, but mountain mint is very strong and minty. Mountain mint actually is not a true mint. It's in a different genus.
One question is, what's your experience with mountain mint spreading?
It's native and I see it in patches here and there. All of my mints that I grow in my garden, I grow in tubs, in round tubs, so that they don't spread. Because I did have a chocolate mint in my garden bed one year and it spread all over. And when I finally pulled it all out, the roots were everywhere. So yeah, mint spread. I don't know about mountain mint. My mountain mint really hasn't grown very much. I guess it doesn't like being in that barrel, but since it's a native and it's not in the mentha genus, it's Pycnanthemum montanum. So it's not, but I'm sure it spreads maybe, but it's not super aggressive like the non-native mints, the menthas. Now these are extremely invasive and there's not a real good way to get rid of any of this because it's everywhere. We've got henbit on the left, ground ivy in the middle, and dead nettle on the bottom right. They're all European natives, and the ground ivy in the middle also has a minty sort of flavor. It's not as sweet as mountain mint or spearmint or the other mints. People used to use it as to flavor beer before hops became the main ingredient, to clarify it, and people used it to flavor teas and sauces. It's not the best tasting. It has no sweetness to it, but it grows like a ground cover and it covers everything. Henbit and anything in the mint family, you can't say this about every family, but everything in the mint family is edible, at least in the Southeast. There are no mint family plants that are toxic or anything like that. But I don't collect dead nettle or henbit for anything. They don't have that mint flavor to them. Burdock. Now burdock is a spreader. When I first moved here, there was no burdock. But over the years, I saw it encroaching and popping up everywhere, and now it is everywhere. But burdock's a wonderful plant. It's huge, and it's what you use are the roots. The roots are edible, like a vegetable, like a carrot. They're big and white, and you can dry them for tea or roast them like a vegetable. That's what they do in Japan. They grow them in special boxes so that in soft dirt, so that they can pull the whole plant up after. It's a biennial, so it sends up leaves the first year and then blooms the second year. And the best time to harvest the roots is after the winter, after the first season. And it's if you catch it early, it can be very easy to control. You just cut the top off before the flowers bloom so that it doesn't spread, because the individual plant only lives 2 years, once to produce leaves and once to produce flowers. And the seeds will spread everywhere. But if you catch it before the seeds spread, then I think you'd be good. But yeah, you can, if you pull up the roots, they're like a crunchy vegetable, and they're like clover. Blood cleansing is the term that I always hear. But yeah, I do like burdock. I use burdock in my chai tea recipe. I use the dried root as part of my as one of my ingredients.
There was a question. I don't know if now is a good time to catch in.
Sure.
Wanting to know if there's a book or several that you may recommend for foraging books to reference for this area, to see a picture of the plant, to know more about the plant, parts to use, lookalikes to discern and avoid. And then the other question was about the recording. And yes, we are intending to have a recording available on the HCLL website if people wanted to view it again.
Well, as far as a book for this area, I'm not really sure. I use Michael Woods has written 2 books. One is for American species, for North American species, and one is for European species. And I use his reference books all the time to figure out what plants are used for, what parts are usable, that kind of thing. As far as identification, I just use Weekly's Flora, but you can always come and take one of my plant ID classes, our hikes. I plan to do several, and I'll probably do a basic plant ID workshop in May. There are lots of my favorite plant ID book is probably Newcomb's. Newcomb's. If I have trouble identifying a plant and I can't find it anywhere else, I almost always find it in Newcomb's Wildflower ID guide. There are a lot of foraging guides out there. I've never really bought any of them because I kind of already know this stuff. So I'm not 100% sure on anything that would be focused on local plants. I think there's a Peterson's guide to edible plants. I don't know if it's Peterson's or the other, but yeah, there's. And anytime you want, if you want to come up to the park, I'm available most of the time. You can ask me any questions you like. We can even go out and talk about plants and what they're used for. Dig some up maybe. No problem. Just I'll be here. On to mountain ash. This grows up at the top of the mountain and a couple other places. The berries this is in the rose family. And of course, and so the berries are edible. You don't want to really, like most berries on most plants, you really don't want to eat them raw or unripe. They're usually best, the flavor is best after a hard frost. Let's see. People would make them into jellies or or cook them with meat. They've got protein, fiber, they're high in iron and vitamin C and vitamin A. So birds would often get caught in the bushes in these small trees. So the scientific name actually means to catch a bird. But this is a nice mountain plant. I actually got a picture my first year here of the berries covered in ice one late winter. But yeah, they're very, very healthy berries. You don't want to eat them too early because they taste terrible. Rose hips, a lot of roses grow here. Now, multiflora rose is a horrible invasive, and the rose hips are pretty useless because they're small and full of seeds. But rose hips are full of vitamin C. You can dry them and use them in tea and stuff like that. Very good. And they're what's the word? They're astringent. So they help tone your insides. But let's see. You can even boil them down and make a syrup or jam or tea. During World War II, British citizens were encouraged to gather rose hips to make vitamin C syrup for children. I actually, yeah, I'll collect rose petals later in the spring and summer, or the summer, to you can make tea out of that too, or throw a bag full of rose petals in your bath. You can see the oil from the petals on the water. It's from what I've read, roses are good for your heart. And maybe that's why they always do roses for Valentine's Day. I don't know, but it's a good heart remedy type of plant. Okay, that's it for the edibles. I was going to move on to the spring ephemerals. They're a little shy this year, but except for the skunk cabbage, which I went out and looked at last week. Skunk cabbage is an odd, smelly plant. That's why it's called skunk. It grows in wet places around streams and stuff. It stinks because it's attracting beetles and flies for pollination. It's a very odd, it's thermogenic. It actually heats up and melts the snow around it to keep warm. I mean, it produces its own heat. And there's a really large patch of this at the United Methodist Church at Newmarket in Boone. The Native Plant Society always does a hike there to look at this skunk cabbage. I think that's where I was last weekend. One of the very first flowers to bloom in the spring here is the spring beauty. It covers the mountain like a carpet, and it has little tiny round edible starchy roots, but I mean, it's not really practical to dig them up. Better for chipmunks and that kind of thing, because they're very tiny. But they do cover the mountain like a carpet, and it's usually in April is when I see the first ones. This is actually, they changed the name to Anemone acutaloba. It used to be hepatica, which has a liver reference, because people saw the leaves and they'd say, oh, it's kind of liver shaped. Back when they did the doctrine of signatures and used plants based on what they looked like for various ailments. This is, sometimes I see this before the spring beauty, but it's not as common. I have to go down in the backcountry and I see it maybe 3 or 4 plants as I'm walking along. I love some bloodroot, very unique type of plant. 1 leaf and 1 flower. The leaf is very odd shaped, as you can see, and it wraps around the bud, protecting it until the bud will eventually grow higher than the leaf and open up, but only for a few days. And the root is toxic, but it produces a sort of a dark orange color. I tried it out because I heard about it, and I took a root and smeared it across a page, and it made a dark orange color, but and I guess it was used as a dye for certain things. But it's a beautiful flower, very bright white. Let's see. The names, the scientific name, Sanguinaria canadensis, sanguinaria, of course, referring to blood of the root, because it actually drips reddish juice. It self-pollinates. Anemone, the windflower, it's wind pollinated. Bright white flowers. Anemone quinquefolia, or wood anemone. It's in the buttercup family. And the flower, the petals aren't really true petals, they're sepals. This is a flower that they have a similar species in Europe and Asia that it's delicate. The peasants would hold their breath if they had to pass these flowers in the past, because they were symbols of death and illness, and Egyptians considered them symbols of sickness for some reason. And we're just like, oh, pretty flower, and they were like skipping past them as fast as they could back in the day. Here we have one of our first violets to bloom. We have a ton of violets. And this one is one of the first to pop up, the halberd leaf violet. And it's called halberd leaf because someone saw the leaf and said, oh, that looks like a halberd. Well, who knows what a halberd is? It's actually an ancient weapon from the 15th, 16th century that is a long spear over 6 feet long with an axe attachment. And I don't see it. I see a long heart shape, but that's what it's called. And it had a lot of the leaves have that unique modeling, the white on the green, very pretty.
Brandy, there was a question in the chat. People were asking if you would tell people whenever the flowers bloom, whenever you're talking about them.
Okay. These spring ephemerals that I'm talking about usually start blooming end of April, beginning of May. I do my wildflower hikes until May because I know I'm not going to see anything. These are some of the very first to pop up. Sometimes you'll see them at the very end of April, but you'll usually see them at the beginning of May. It's all of these flowers, the first week in May, you're bound to come across them. First, second week in May, depending on the year, is when all of these ephemerals spring up. If you want to see them before that, you go down to the back country where it's only about 3,800 to 4,000 feet in elevation. You'll see these in April. Mid-April to the end of April. Trout lilies, they also like to spread and cover like a ground, like the spring beauties. They spread out. We have 2 different species of trout lily. They call them trout lilies because of the leaves, because they look spotted and mottled like a trout. We have the American trout lily and the dimpled trout lily, and it's just a dimple on the flowering part that you never see, and one hangs down lower to the ground than the other. This one, of course, is the American. The dimpled hangs further down to the ground. But yeah, I see these are all over the backcountry. But when the spring beauties bloom on the mountain, That's when you see the trout lilies as well. They kind of bloom at the same time. Anywhere between mid-April and mid-May is when you're most likely to see these guys. And these are not edible because they were used in the past to make people vomit. But bees like them. Bees like the pollen. Now we get to the trilliums. We have 3 species of trillium. This one is ill-scented trillium. Some people call this wake robin, but it's not a good name for this area because the robins come way before these bloom. And wherever they were first named that, it's because the robins came and started singing and doing their thing at the same time as the bloom. Here it's not the case, but ill-scented is a good name because it does stink, because it attracts the flies and beetles for pollination. And it's the first trillium to open here. The earliest, which is early May, first week in May. The great white trillium comes later, a couple weeks later. It's much taller, the flower's bigger, and as it ages, the petals turn from white to pink. And it does not smell because it's pollinated differently. Ants disperse the seeds. A lot of these plants, almost all of these plants, go through a process called myrmecochory, where the ants come and take the seeds and disperse them, because these seeds have a little layer of fat on them, little glob, and if the ants take it, they eat the fat, and then they throw the seed off in their dump pile, and it becomes a new plant. Now, this one is extremely rare here. It's beautiful, and it has dark green leaves, painted trillium. I saw this a few years ago behind the park office, but I haven't seen it recently. The problem with the trilliums is I see less and less every year because they get eaten by the deer. The deer population is going up, and so more trilliums are getting eaten. But I love this one, it's beautiful. We have several species of white violet. They come later. Let's see. The yellow violets typically bloom first, and then the purple and white come later in the summer. Only the purple ones are really edible because the white ones and the yellow ones have saponins, a certain chemical that's irritating to the esophagus, and so but the purple ones don't really have much of that. And purple violets are soothing to the stomach, and because they have mucilage that's cooling and soothing. Let's see. And with purple violets, the flowers and the leaves are used for tea or in salads or to decorate cakes. Dutchman's breeches. Have you guys seen this one? Dutchman's breeches, the leaves you see there, they form clumps, and these grow all over the high country. They look like a little pair of upside down pants. And the big clumps of leaves, I actually, when I was going up the mountain one time, there was a big clump of leaves, and I looked in, and a bird had built its nest in the clump of Dutchman's breeches. Native Americans used this plant to treat syphilis. Seeds are dispersed by ants. Bumblebees like it, but it is toxic. You don't want to eat it. Very closely related plant is squirrel corn. It has very similar looking leaves. It's kind of hard to tell the difference between them if they're not blooming. The name refers to a cluster of small yellow bulblets. The centra refers to spurs on the flower, highly toxic, seed dispersed by ants, pollinated by bumblebees, just like the other one. And I think this is the last one, cutleaf toothwort. The toothwort refers to the shape of the root, but this is in the mustard family. See the 4 petals? That's very typical of the mustard family, 4 petals. The leaves are very dissected, and it blooms about the same time as the trout lilies and the hepaticas and all that, late April or early May. It's also called pepperroot because it's in the mustard family. It's edible. It's a little spicy, just like most of the plants in the mustard family. And it's host to the falcate orange tip butterfly. Okay, that's everything. That's all the plants I was going to talk about. I can't see the chat, but you can also unmute yourself and ask questions. I just wanted to show this picture last because it's not a spring flower. It's flame azaleas, and our mountaintop is covered in flame azaleas. So mid-June, come on, you hike to the top and you'll see these amazing, covered in these orange flowers. I have been told by someone that our color variation in our flame azaleas is only second to those in the Smoky Mountains, because you can see flowers from yellow all the way to deep red and everything in between, peach and orange and all on, and sometimes on the same flower. But they're gorgeous, and I tell everybody about them. Let me see.
We have a couple of things. Well, in the chat, there's been a few things going on there. Those books that you referenced, Haley, one of the students posted links to those books that you mentioned that maybe people are interested in. And then the other one that I think Ethan shared, the link to events that are going on. Someone was asking about that, if there are updating weekly flyers and having online the schedule for hikes and classes and workshops. And I think the other one Haley mentioned was this idea of the app on a smartphone. Has anyone ever used that? The Picture This app, or Brandy, do you have
Yes,
comments on that?
I actually have several on my phone. I have Picture This and I have Seek. And they're not necessarily, you have to get a picture of the flower with nothing else growing around it in order for them to really pick up the right plant normally I use that to get to the genus. For species, they're not terribly great for that, but to get down to the genus, that's super helpful in getting a start on identifying stuff. So yeah, I have researched these, and Seek and Picture This have the best ratings and are ones that were recommended by botanists to me.
Thank you. There's some good suggestions. Are there other questions? or comments? I think I've captured everything. Joe and Susan mentioned that they love the app as well. Being relatively new to the area, it's been helpful for curiosity about plants and trees.
Well, this year is the year of the tree for state parks. That's our theme. So I'll probably be doing a lot of tree programs, but I'll also be doing my plant ID workshop. It's a 6-hour workshop in May, where I'll teach people all the basics of plant ID and take them out and help them ID plants in the field for anyone who's interested. And if you, it's not a common practice, but anyone can call a state park at any time and ask, can you take us out on a tree walk? Can you take us out on a wildflower hike? That's perfectly fine to do.
Joanna had asked in the chat, how can we find out if Brandy is working a given day and a good time to come?
Just call the park office. You can ask, are you working on May 6th, or are you working? And also I will try to post my programs. I will be posting my programs on the North Carolina State Parks website. You just go to Elk Knob State Park and look at the list of activities or events.
Very
I'll
informative.
put that link
Thank
in
you,
the
Brandy.
chat for anybody interested.
Is that?
Or Michael, was there something else that you're going to say?
No, I just said very informative. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you, Brandy. We really appreciate you taking the time to come and talk to everybody about this. Are there any more questions before we continue? Because we have a short poll after Brandy gets finished answering all the questions. Since we're recreation management students, we're doing this for a class, and we'd really like to get some input on how we did and put that input towards future events. It'll only take a few minutes. It's only a few questions. So are there any more questions before we do that?
Thank you, Brandy. This was excellent.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay, great. If there are no more questions, we're going to go ahead and open that poll right now. It should be popping up on your screen here in just a minute. There we go.
All right, it looks like everyone finished the poll, so I'm gonna go ahead and end it. Thank you for filling it out.
When's the next program? Is there another one coming up?
Yes, there is. We've got another one coming up. So thank you everyone for being here today. We really appreciate you coming. The next one we have is, let me see, April 20th at 12 p.m. It's a Wednesday. We're going to have Willard Watson III from the Blowing Rock Art and History Museum. He's going to be talking about moonshine. So that one should be really fun. I'm excited for it. And you can access that the same way you got here today through our website. And then you can also register to receive a reminder email. So that's encouraged, but you don't have to register if you don't want to. So that one is April 20th, 12 p.m. on Zoom as well. All right. Thank you everyone for being here today. We appreciate it.
We keep trying to improve. And so we will have, if you do want to register for the next one, you'll get a reminder email. So you can register on that High Country Lifelong Learner website and how you got to the Zoom link today. So if you have any other feedback you want to put in the chat for us, we really appreciate it. The students are learning. We're learning all these online things. So thank you to Brandy. We really appreciate you being here. Thanks so much for your program today. Good to see you, Judith.
See you. We'll talk again.
Sounds good. Look forward to it. Thanks for coming.